What's this about?
Just be careful with it.
I am absolutely thrilled to introduce you to Wanjiru Njendu, the writer, producer, and director of the phenomenal film Boxed. Welcome, welcome, Wanjiru. So good to see you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Karen. And thank you to the Free Speech Film Festival for awarding Box with the Free Speech Award.
Oh, our pleasure. I can't tell you, I have seen this movie a lot, and every time there's that gaspy moment, and then I need a few minutes to kind of get myself together afterwards. Wow, there is so much I want to talk to you about, but I guess we really should start about how you came to make the film. Now, I've heard you say that you did not find the film, but the film found you. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yes. So I Box did find me as a story. There was a different film I wanted to make, but at the time, because I wanted to invest in my production myself, the money did not allow it. And by chance, I happened to go to the Hollywood Creative Forum, which is held annually in Los Angeles in 2018 spring. And while there, I met Karen Parsons, who used to play Hillary on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And she had just completed a series of short animated films, which were premiering on Netflix. And they're based on African-American history and to educate children. And she had, the first story they did was Henry Brown's story. And then they did Harriet Tubman and John Henry. And I remembered the story because I went to college in Boston, and at the Newton Museum, they do have a replica box of Henry. And the story would not leave my mind at all. And I could not stop thinking about it. And I went home, went to bed. I was trying to think, is this a story I want to tell? At 2 a.m., I woke up and the script exploded out of me. And aside from a few spell checks, the film you see is the film that I woke up and wrote at 2 in the morning. So that's why I say the film found me. And it was also an inspiration because it was one of the first things I made after a very close friend had passed away. He unfortunately committed suicide, and I could never stop thinking about the fact that chains are not only physical, they're also mental. And this was the film that helped me to be able to process and to be able to tell the story so authentically.
And is that to whom you've dedicated the film?
Yes, the film is dedicated to Owiso Odera, who was an amazing actor, a very good friend, and a big brother to me as well.
Mm. It's set in 1849, but it resonates so amazingly today. Did that inspire your treatment of the film, or is that just the reality of where we are?
It inspired my treatment because one of the things that absolutely exhausts me as a filmmaker and as a Black filmmaker is how many times people do not hesitate to say, oh, not another slave film. And I just felt that there's such a disconnect with people because given the time, and for me, I always understand the films that personalize and the films that make you experience what a character is going through are the ones that stay with me longest. So I had to think to myself, what was the most important message I wanted to tell with Henry's story? And it was accountability. It was accountability, both Henry's accountability, because he did actually have to leave. He ended up leaving because his owner, the property owner, ended up selling his family. Henry had been raising money to buy his family's freedom. And so he made that choice, but also just the accountability. I always sit and wonder, whenever you see something wrong or something evil happening, what could you as a passerby have said or done? And so it was very important for me, not to the audience just to not only experience Henry's journey, his fear, everything that he possibly could have had and experienced, but also to be the reason why he was in that box, to be the reason that you're actually helpless and not being able to do anything about him being in the box.
There's another kind of personal connection. Your family, you have an understanding of a lack of freedom because, as I understand it, your grandparents told you stories about time that they spent in Kenya during the Kenyan struggle for freedom from the British. Can you speak to that a little bit and how that informed your thinking?
Yes, yes. My family, we grew up in Kenya. And Kenya is a former British colony. And my grandmother, I used to spend a lot of times with both my paternal grandfather and grandmother, but my paternal grandmother, her name was Dorcas Moby. She used to tell me some amazing stories. And I remember thinking she was very upbeat in spite of what they went through in the equivalent of an internment camp. And so when I was in college, she actually inspired me to make a documentary on a few, because as time passed, they were getting older. And my grandmother was a very big storyteller. In an African tradition, storytellers are passed through the matriarch and through verbal storytelling. And I realized that I could pick up a camera and have these voices in a legacy. And several years, almost a decade after I made that film, I got an email from a British firm that was representing Mau Mau freedom fighters in a case against the British government. And I was the only person at the time with an interview of an officer called John Nottingham, who actually got dishonorably discharged, because he would not lead an attack on a Kikuyu village. And so from a very young age, my grandparents, my parents always spoke to us, and we were very aware of the colonial war in Kenya, who the Mau Mau were, what they stood for, what the freedom that we got in 1963 meant as a country. And that somehow has always influenced my voice as a filmmaker, to just always try and give your characters, your actors, or whatever type of story you're telling, a bit more depth.
That's really, and we at American Insight really understand how film can be such a powerful tool for discussing issues like free speech and human rights, and you found your voice very, very strongly in that, and we're so glad that you made this film.
Thank you.
This is an interesting way to lead into an interview that Ade McCormick, who played Henry in the film, who's an extraordinary actor, he gave an interview and he talked about what attracted him to the film. And let's take a look at what he has to say. This is live, everybody. Just getting ready to listen to the clip of Ade. There we go.
Hi, I'm Adetokunbo McCormack, and I play Henry Box Brown in Boxed.
Awesome. So what drew you to the project, and why did you end up wanting to be in this role?
What drew me to the project was it was so very well written. And there were certain things about it that I found, parallel things that are happening today. You have slavery, for example, in Libya, people who are enslaved mentally and they don't even know it. I feel like even in our current social political climate, there's a lot of slavery going on as well, and people are subjugated and are not really given the freedoms that our Constitution allows. Coretta Scott King said that slavery is never really won. You have to earn it in every generation. And I think every generation we have to keep fighting for our people to be free.
It was fascinating for me to hear his voice, because in this film, of course, he never speaks. And it sounds as though he was the perfect person for you to work with on this film. Not only his talent, but his spirit.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody gets surprised when they hear Ade's voice speak, because Ade is one of the happiest people I know. He's very lighthearted, but we do have extensive conversations. And even before, when I wanted to do Box, because I wanted to do it with actors I knew, because I had a time crunch when I could do the film. And, he's a very strong physical performance actor. And one of the things that comes with freedom is the ability for other oppressors to silence people. So that's why I made the very deliberate choice that you would never hear Henry speak in the box. You would always hear everything he's experiencing through other people. And even just, we talked about what was happening in Libya, which is still happening today. A lot of African refugees try to cross into Europe and the Middle East through Libya, and there are actual slave auctions still happening today. And that interview was when we shot the film. So we talked about that. There was a string of police brutalities as well that week. So that also put a day in the mind that, you know, on one end, he's hearing stories about Libya and slavery still continuing on refugees, but then also watching images of men being brutalized who look like him. So he did a lot of research. He really did put a lot through himself, and stayed very much in character. And it was very impressive. I knew when I asked him to do it, but what he brought was on a different level. And I knew I had made the right choice with him to play Henry.
And people may recognize him because he's quite an accomplished actor. He was in Blood Diamond, he's been in Lost, Heroes, and a host of other
Yes,
television programs.
he's currently voicing a show called Castlevania, a character named Isaac, a Netflix animated show, and he's a very popular character as that.
That's great. Well, now you bring up animation. I think we might owe a certain Steven Spielberg a thank you for your being here, because as I understand it, if you had not seen E.T., which wasn't really animation, when you were a young girl growing up in Mombasa, you would not be sitting here as an award-making filmmaker. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my father really loves movies. He really loves movies. He loves books. And one of our favorite things as a family was renting VHS cassettes. And for those who are too young in the audience, it was a rectangular device we used to shove into a box so that we could watch movies. And I remember when we rented E.T. that I didn't understand what I was watching, but I knew it really impacted me. And he could see it, and he could talk to me. And I was a storyteller. I liked writing. My favorite subject was English. My favorite subject was compositions. You know, my dad would always be buying me exercise books to write in. And so he really fostered a love of film from a very young age. It's something I associated film with family time, film with storytelling. And when I started recognizing names. And when I saw E.T., I wanted to know, who is this director? And then it led to, you know, Close Encounters. It led to watching Jaws when we're not supposed to be watching Jaws as kids. And I started understanding the impact just watching Mr. Spielberg's voice and then it started changing, you know, to Penny Marshall, Nancy Myers, to present day Dee Reese. And when you start understanding what a director does and how you can take the words off the pages, and that your voice is unlimited, you know, depending on what type of story you want to tell. It really helped me understand what I wanted to do and really have that guidance and support from my family to becoming a filmmaker.
So how did a little girl from Mombasa in Kenya get to the United States and to Hollywood? Tell us your journey.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate when I wanted to go to film school. I got a first degree in psychology, which actually really helps. Billy Wilder always says you're a director and both a psychologist and a psychoanalyst. And so when I decided to go to film school at the time, my brothers and sisters were in Boston, and there wasn't much of a scripted. I did know I wanted to do scripted stories with a minor in focus in documentary. And so at the time I applied to a few, and I got into Emerson College on the East Coast. So that's how a little girl came from Mombasa through Nairobi to Boston, went to film school. It was a really wonderful school where they really emphasize on building teams, on collaboration. So from day one, you know, we had students running entire productions as if they were on a Hollywood set, which was something I'd never seen. The scope, you know, every shoot had a first assistant director, production designer. Everybody had a role. Everybody came together. And then after I graduated from Emerson, I moved to the West Coast to Los Angeles.
And now, this year, you've been invited to be a member and able to vote for the Academy Award into the
Yes.
Academy of Arts and Science, Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Congratulations!
I know. I say AMPAs because it's a very long
it's
sentence.
A long, God, really
I'm very honored. Another festival director saw box and passed it to an Academy member who made me his nominee. So at the end of June, actually 8 hours to my birthday, a press release came out and my name was on it. And wow. So I told the Academy, thank you for giving me one of the greatest birthday presents. Absolutely. So it comes with all the membership benefits. It comes with mentoring young filmmakers. And just to be able to join such a global village of not only filmmakers whose work I've looked up to since I was a very small child, but to also be joining the Academy with several of my peers, and to know that Box not only has a strong message, but it's enough to impact somebody to decide to change my life that way by making me his nominee is a testament to the film and my cast and my crew.
Oh, it's fantastic. Okay, so now let's pull back the curtain a little bit so
Yes.
folks in the audience can get an idea of how you make a film like this. So first thing, stunning, beautifully visual, textural, amazing film. You see, I'm in my mind thinking big soundstage in Hollywood where you shot it. Not exactly the case, right? So let's
No,
take a
it
look
was
at slide
absolutely
number
not the
one,
case.
and you'll tell us where you actually shot this thing.
So it's very interesting because it's called movie magic for a reason. This is actually a friend's office in Los Angeles, because for me the only three characters on the shoot day were Henry, the box, and the light that we used to. So we got a friend's office. He has a large space in the back. So this was my very small crew coming together, dressing the box. We shot in one day. So what you see is my DP Bongani Mlambo standing, and he's measuring where he can move the lights, where he can take out the ceiling, and instructing his crew, the three gentlemen standing with him. In the box is Mackenzie Jordan, one of our production designers. And as you can see, the box had nothing to it. It was a box. And the box actually has a history of its own. That box that you're looking at, I got from a prop house, and it turns out that it was a crate that used to ship rum from the West Indies to the US. And so this is the process when you see of creating Henry's World, because Henry's World was so small. But I did want people to understand, the texture and the feeling of just, I did not want just an empty voice, a box. I wanted the box to have a character. So you can see Mackenzie on there taking pictures of the progress. That's Brittany, my other production designer, in the background. And what they're doing here is what we call set dressing, where they're putting aged sackcloth on the sides. The water jug is actually rented from a prop house, a little metal water jug. That's a period water jug. The sackcloths, we took a bit of sackcloth, we put fake blood in it. And so that's what was happening in this picture.
That's great. Let's take a look at slide number 4. We can see the box dressed.
Yes.
Now
so
you mentioned, go ahead.
Yes. No, go ahead, Karen.
No, just gonna say, you mentioned the water bottle. And another thing is, in the real story, Henry, in order to sort of get away from his owner, poured sulfide, something on his hand, burned his hand horribly as an
He
excuse to
actually
leave
worked.
work, right?
Yes, he actually worked in a factory. He was not on a land enslaved man. He actually worked. So the enslaved people not only worked land, they also worked in factory processing cotton and processing gin. And he deliberately burnt his hand so that he wouldn't go to work the day that he chose his escape.
So you
if you
can
look
see
at
that bloodied, bandaged
yes,
hand in there, and that
yes.
was.
So we tried to keep. We did a lot of research. We made sure to keep as many of the injuries that he encountered, because the box was tossed around. It was transferred from wagon to wagon. And as you can see, this box did not have the fourth wall. We needed to find a box that did not have the fourth wall so that the camera could fit in there, so that the camera was the fourth wall, the camera was the eye that was experiencing and everything that Henry was going through. And we can see a bit of that in the next slide.
Yeah, I've also heard you say that you you think inside the box.
Yes, I
When
had
you
to
make
think
this film.
inside the box with this film, because a lot of times as a filmmaker, I try and remember what, again, I reference back to Mr. Spielberg when I watched a documentary where he was talking about making Jaws, and they did all the prep. You can do all the preparation in the world, and you get to set and something goes wrong. And when they got to set, the shark that they had designed sunk straight to the bottom of the water tank. It would not float. So then they had to find creative ways. And that's what I said, because I was shooting in a box, I had to think inside the box. So this was Bongani, checking the distance of the movement he'd be able to accomplish with the camera. That's what Ade was seeing with his performance. And so to be able, to just imagine what Ade, this camera is in his face, but he's still being able to give this performance. The camera is not distracting from him. This is actually what he was seeing while he was in the box.
Amazing. And lighting, clearly a challenge. Let's look at slide number 7. There were some interesting fixes that had to be made to accomplish that.
Yes, so because we didn't have a fourth box, we had to be very careful how to control the lighting. And I have as I said, I had a very creative production design team, and they took a very large cardboard box. And the thing is, we still needed light to come into the box, but we needed to control the light. So where you see the black tape, they actually sliced lines into the box, and we would take on the tape and put it back depending on where I wanted the light to fall on Adele's face during his performance. And this box was actually, we actually also jerry-rigged this cardboard box, as you can see with the arm, to be able to go back and forth. So I could bend down and give him some notes. Bongani could either come inside the box or pull back and be on the dolly track to go in and outside the box. So
Wow.
it was actually a really creative team on this one.
Now, you mentioned Bongani a lot as your DP, and talk a little bit about the relationship between a director and the director of photography. We'll look at this slide here, the two of you together.
Yeah, so Bongani and I are very collaborative. I'm very fortunate that he's a friend as well as a creative collaborator. And a lot of DPs tend to just be very technical, where's the camera, where's the light. But one of the things I love about Bongani, and when I told him light was going to be a character, you know, if the way we played the film, because Henry's journey was 27 hours, I told him I need midday, I need dusk, I need night, and I need dawn. And so during filming and during rehearsal, we'd always go back and I'd be like, giving him references from other films. I would be like, you know, because when you're working in film, you speak in terms of color and temperature. I'd be like, I want this color, but can you make the temperature this? Can you make it warmer? Can you make it this? Can you make it from a cold to a hot? And so all throughout the process, he is literally, a DP is the right hand of a director, and a good DP who absolutely takes notes or doesn't hesitate to give you suggestions is the very heartbeat of the film.
You know, let's take a look at some of the creativity he brought to that. Slide number 9, we'll see him on the ground with, it looks like a phone. What was he doing?
Yes, so he has an app. So Bongani makes sure he always has different apps that he films the rehearsals, and while he's filming, the app actually calculates the angles and the distance from the subject matter. So because again, Box looks like a very simple film, it really wasn't. It was a very technical film. And in this scene, you know, we had a day in the upside down scene, but we also had to shove a day over in the box. So it was him calculating at the speed that the box would be shoved over, and for him to be able to calculate what lens. So when he does that, he gets on the ground, he records what he thinks, then we look back at that, and then I make adjustments. My short list is never really locked. It's a guide and it's a spine to the film. And as we film, you know, you add on the flesh, you add the wardrobe, you add the production design. And so once he films a rehearsal, he goes home, and then he also adds his own notes and saying, you know, you had suggested this lens, I would suggest we do this, or we shoot with this and we swap out to this lens. So it's a very also collaborative document. And then after we've done the rehearsal, he shot it, he's put in his equipment requirements, then I send the list to my first assistant director.
Let's take a look at shot 10, and that's sort of you, you and Bongani going over it. And it's funny, what's going on in the box?
My assistant producer was recording this, and it was really funny because I couldn't find one picture on my phone that I wanted to reference for Bongani. So she had cracked a joke. So this is actually a good balance to show the production, because you can see the friendship between the three of us, which led to a very amazing, you know, I always cast my films, but with this one, because I wanted a certain intimacy, I wanted to work with actors whose work I already knew. So for rehearsal, with exception of one thing, with every rehearsal, I made sure I was on the ground with him. He stayed in the box during rehearsal. You know, you can see him in his jeans and his shoes and his t-shirt. And so I wanted it to be on the ground because I wanted to create that director-actor conversation in the intimacy, with the exception of this next slide. And I can explain why with this. So this was a scene where you experience it, where the audience and you experience a possible sexual assault that he had on his journey. And I deliberately stood up because not only did I want to establish for a day where his eye line was going to be, but because I also wanted to give the beginning of the sense of the power imbalance, you know, that there was nothing he could have done about that. At this point, a day, I told him, with this scene, I want you to feel like the entire world has been turned upside down. And so that's why when I was talking him through this scene, you see me up and higher. But I always make a point at whatever character my actor is playing, I try and match them when I'm giving my notes.
Perfect. Now let's take a look at, we have a series of 3 photos, starting with number 12 here. So this is that now. This is it. It's happening now. And how did you feel when you finally got to the point where it was actually being shot?
It was very emotional because, you know, we started, the crew always starts the day early, and the actor usually comes about 2 hours later after our day has started. So when Ade came to set, we had already begun our day, and he was in jeans, a t-shirt, and then he went into makeup, and then he walked on to set, and he was Henry, is the only way to describe that very first moment. I mean, the crew had read the script, it had already impacted them, but seeing him with the bloodied eye, with the bandage, the bloodied bandage, and seeing him and Bongani. And there was such an amazing intimacy in the way, because you can see, you know, I'm very thankful I had a very fit director of photography and actor because of being in that space. So this is when, you know, Ade came out, and just before we shot, there was just this moment where we wanted to acknowledge, you know, what we were about to do, and who he had become, and whose story he had taken on, and whose flesh he was going to recreate, and all the pain that he was going to recreate. And that was the final look before we started filming the day.
That's such an amazing shot. Now, one of the moments in the film that takes your breath away is the scene with the assault on the enslaved woman. And talk a little bit about how you worked with your actors to make that actually happen.
That scene was incredibly difficult because I feel that a lot of times it's not addressed in films that, you know, we knew this assaults happens, and we knew that, you know, I felt that there were a lot of times where people had to choose cowardice, you know, to survive, especially enslaved people. And so with working that scene, you know, there was a moment of silence, and just really the crew enabling for him to get into that mind frame, and for him, and we can play the clip, and I can go in a little bit more.
Okay.
And just the preparation on that.
Okay, good.
She was quiet as a mouse. Then I bit her neck, made her squeal real good.
You, girl, come on over here. What you in a hurry for?
Oh, Massa, I got to get back to the inn. I be in trouble.
We just gonna have us some fun.
Please, please.
So this scene was actually incredibly difficult for us to film. It was incredibly difficult for me writing it. It was incredibly difficult for Ade to play it. It was incredibly difficult for the cast the crew to see it being filmed. And, you know, one of the things I told Ade about that, I just told him the anguish she is going through, his scream matches her scream. And as you can see, he absolutely nailed it and set that tone. And one of the things with Box, we did not record any sound on set. We shot the film what is called MOS, which is no sound recorded on set. And I made that deliberate choice for two reasons. Because the film is set in 1849, I knew that filming in Los Angeles, there would be a lot of additional sounds, you know, a car honking, a plane flying over. But I also wanted to be able to control and heighten every moment that was happening for Henry. So as you see with the next slide, so after we shot, this was the next part of the production.
We'll go to slide 17. Yeah.
So these are the actors who played up, and a few of them doubled up on voices. And so they had not seen the film before they came into the recording booth. I have a wonderful friend who's an engineer. And so what we did is that we did a little bit of placements, a temporary audio track, which we had, you know, just some temporary sound. Like the horses sound, you know, when they're chasing the wagon. And when they saw the film, it was incredible to see how even their demeanor adjusted, and they're all amazing voice actors. You know, Ade had to come in, as you can see on the bottom right, and do all the breathing sounds. And because he's also a really great voice actor, you know, he had to match his breaths. He had to match, you know, himself just breathing and trying to hold his breath and screaming. Perez, who you see on the left, played the enslaved woman who was assaulted, and she made such incredible, incredible choices in the booth, that just her whimpering, her scream, when she let out the scream and we finished doing the take, my engineer and I had to pause. And then on the right of Perez, what was Mikey Kettinger, who played Passmore Williams, who was the man who actually helped organize for Henry. William played two roles actually. He played the wagon driver and the steamboat master at the end. So you not only have really incredible actors, they have actors who do voiceover work, so they're able to embellish other characters' voices. And this is something in every screening, none of the audience members have ever caught on, that some roles were double up voices. And on the bottom left, oh my goodness, Gregor, I describe Gregor as he has the voice of James Earl Jones, which is very deep. And what was interesting, I wanted fear. And one of the things people ask me is, you did not cast a white man to play the slave master. And I was like, I wanted a man with a very, very powerful voice, the slave patrol that were hunting Henry. But on top of that, there was something also very symbolic about, having somebody with the same complexion as Henry playing that role. And I knew it was about finding the right voice for that, as opposed to trying to recreate exactly what it was. And his voice just creates absolute fear, and it reverbs through the booth when we're recording it. And Emerson, who played in the beginning, was at the beginning of the film, in the middle, delivering the truck, and also at the end. And he was one of the voices of the men who were in the assault. So just having them watch, they recorded lines on their own. Then I put them in the booth together. They recorded lines together. And they, when we had the scene of the fight, William, who's on the top right, and Greg, who's on the bottom, they were shoving each other inside the recording booth. They had their hands on each other. And so it was very authentic. It was very incredible seeing how they committed to the physicality, but also coming off a day's performance and energy, and just being able to recreate the exact sounds that I wanted and the voices during that time.
That's amazing. And I think when we spoke earlier, for when Ade was doing the scene, how did he know when what was happening was happening? How did you?
There are a few places I gave him cues, but a lot of the times, especially if I wanted an authentic reaction for him, I would tell him we're starting the scene, and my associate producer would read the script very softly so that he could hear the timing when she's reading but I would not tell him when the crew was about to slam down on the case. So a lot of the reactions, he's very method. It's very organic. We had them shaking the case. As you can see on this side, there are two of them on the side shaking the case. In the background was one of my production designers. She's pouring sand from the top of the case. So sometimes in some performances, especially the scene where he's being hunted, I would not tell him what side of the case the sound would come. And it was just amazing to see him organically react and play correctly to where I needed him to play, given what I told him about the moment.
And he is quite claustrophobic, right?
He and I and my DP, we had three very claustrophobic, three main people, and that really added, when Ade came out of the box, he was drenched. Like at the end of the day, when he came out, he was soaking wet, his hands were shaking. So for him to harness that incredible fear and to use that to power his performance is just beyond a testament. When he first told me that he was claustrophobic, I was a little worried. And when he got in during the rehearsal and I saw him be able to harness his own fear and just let that fear explode when he was performing, was an incredible testament to the actor he is.
Absolutely. Wow. And tell us about when you screened the finished product for everybody. What was that experience like?
It was very funny because when you do a screening, everybody sees each other. It was interesting because none of them, we all knew each other, but nobody had seen Ade since we shot it. And so it was a mini reunion, and he met some of the other actors. Everybody had me in common. So not everybody knew each other, but they knew me. So, when you get to the screening, which we did at a friend's office that has a screening room, the mood is lighthearted and everything. And even my editor, I had to warn her. My editor was Hannah Stewart, who's an amazing young editor. And I had to tell her, even without sound, she told me when she edited the assault scene, she had to put her mouse down and take a walk. It was that, and the scene still does that to us. And so, we sit down to watch the film, and I play the film, and the screening room had this sound, and the sound designer, John Cantu, is an incredible trailer editor and a friend at Universal Pictures. So he really took the skills that he does on studio movie levels to make this really intimate, yet so powerfully sounding film. And so, we sit down to a screening, we've all come together, there's some food, everybody's having some food. And then I play the film, and there was just absolute complete silence. And the thing is, I knew they knew what it was that we were doing with the film, but I think there was just, everybody was just incredibly silent. Like when they saw their voices come together, they saw the fear, they saw the performance. We just all sat there, and everyone had tears in their eyes. And we realized, I always talk about with each project I do, my film family, and we realized as a family what we had done with this film, and what it was going to do once it went out into the world.
Wow. And out into the world, it's gone. You've been in something like 60 festivals.
72 now. We're
72.
now up to, yeah,
Wow.
it's really had a really incredible festival, and screenings outside that. I try to also let it play at universities and schools. So it's had an incredible festival run.
And I've heard you say that what you want this film to do is to start a conversation.
It's to start a conversation because, at the time, it's actually also made me realize as a filmmaker the importance of my voice and how film can evolve. Because at the time we made the film, there were certain things happening in the world, but which have become so much more magnified now, that to the point that, I had a few friends, I did a special screening, and I was like, hey, if you guys want to watch this with your kids to help them understand, because, there's an African saying, to know where you're going, you have to know where you've come from. And for me to have somebody say, my son is 8, but I need him to see this film, it's just incredibly powerful with that. And just, I've been having more conversations on the relevance of this film. It was in 1849, but there are still a lot of issues which happen to present day. And the film has become much bigger than, I knew what I wanted it to say. I did not expect it to echo as much as it did. And for that, I'm very grateful, when you have a cast and a crew, and to Karen for just inspiring and for reminding, her method of teaching the children is much gentler through animation. But this is a film that also makes people understand their own accountability, their own responsibility. When you think you're not doing anything, you're being passively in a situation, you're still affecting the situation, and you're still affecting the outcome of a situation.
There's a wonderful, actually one of our wonderful interns, China Williams, did an interview with you, and you told her about this Canadian festival you went to that was really kind of a wonderful example of this starting of the conversation. Tell us a little bit about that.
I just also want to say China was actually one of the best interviews I've done. She's a very young intern, but she did ask a lot of questions, which I've not encountered. When you have a film play such a long festival run, the questions can repeat themselves. And that's one of the things I really like about the Free Speech Festival, was that I went, oh, I haven't been asked that question before. So the film played in Calgary last year. There's a small town called Okotoks, about an hour out of Calgary. And the festival, they loved the film. They really wanted me to come. And I was just like, look, it's a cost attending every festival. And so we all got in touch with the American Embassy in Calgary. They screened the film. They're like, absolutely. So the American Embassy actually flew me up to Canada to speak about the film. And it was a very small town, maybe 100 people, but it's a very intimate town. They really support the film festival. It's one of their big summer things. And they did not know the story of Henry Box Brown. And that also is a testament to how American history is portrayed to the outside world. And so during the Q&A session with the filmmakers after, they were just like, where can we learn more? Where can we see other stuff? And the next Friday, When They See Us, which was written and directed by Ava DuVernay, was coming out on Netflix. And so there I was in a small town talking to 100 people. And I was like, I can provide a list of resources, but off the top of my head, when you go home tonight, add a series called When They See Us, which was about the men accused and labeled as the Central Park Five. And we know how that situation played, because one of their biggest accusers, unfortunately, is now the president of the United States. And so they went to, they all actually added the film. And for weeks after that, I was getting emails. Oh my God, this film, this series is so powerful. You know, we did not know this story. And so for me to be able, and Ava has a much bigger platform. Ava's voice is so magnificent and strong in the films she tells. And so to be able to say, I don't have another piece of work to educate you, but there's this other filmmaker. And some of them went from watching When They See Us to watching Selma. And they were just like, you know, there was a constant educating and seeking out information. And that's one of the things. You know, another scenario was my DP and I had to divide festivals. We had 2 festivals that were playing the same day. So one was in Los Angeles, one was in Santa Barbara. So he went to the one in Santa Barbara, and there was actually a Freedom Rider in the audience. And the man came up to him and said, you have actually captured the exact fear we every time we got on those buses. And we knew the danger we were putting ourselves in, but every day we had to get on those buses and make a better future for our children. And it was just, when he told me the story, I got chills up and down my back, that there's living history testifying that something we made is very authentic and accurate.
Absolutely. Wow, that's just amazing. We're going to open up to questions now. So I just want to do a little I think we already might have some. All right, how am I doing? Okay, Khalid, I'm pressing the Q&A button, but I'm not seeing questions.
I can see, would you like me to just read the first
one?
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So our first question is for Sharon Eisenhower. Fascinated by the length of the film, how did you decide that? And did you think of making it longer or not? So powerful at this short length. Thank you so much, Sharon. I knew the scene was only going to be 4 scenes. And that was because I wrote the story. Light is a very big thing for me. You know, I always remember, you know, every time, you know, my parents would remind you that you're a light, your role in the world is a light. And I'll never forget, someone once said to me that even in the darkest of nights, if you light a candle, you will still see the candle. And so I wanted it to just be the midday, the dusk, the night, and to the dawn. But I also wanted it to be so short that it shook you. I don't like, you know, the thing with Henry's story is that, you know, if I had tried to do other things, I think it would have watered down what I was trying to say, and which was the incredible fear and that journey, the courage it took to get into that box, and also to be quiet as he listened to atrocities happening around him during his journey. And so, and I also don't like long short films. I am not a fan. I do program for some festivals, and it's very, I always tell people a long short film with extra things put in there just to make it longer can actually feel longer than a feature film. And for me, I wanted people to be able to watch it and immediately go back and watch it again and go through that journey again. And so, and they always say sometimes shorter is sweeter. You know, you never want to say that in a film like this, but I think as a very good storyteller, you know, it's always a lesson to teach yourself to become a better storyteller in how to cut, to ask yourself, what am I saying? Does this add or does this take away? And I'm not planning to make a longer project. That was it for me with Box. The film said what it said. It sparks enough discussion that people go research about Henry. And the fact, and I think the thing that struck me most when I researched him after I wrote the script was Henry's mind in a way broke while he was in the box. He became an actor magician. And one of his tricks was coming out of a box. Like, if I had to travel 27 hours in a box, I am never going to be in a box again, you know, even if it's a burial. And so for him to willingly still go back and in, even though it was this theatrical performance-like thing that he was doing, it made me realize that it had to stay inside the box no matter what. So let me see one more question. The next question is actually from my lovely sister Mogore. She says, amazing, insightful interview, no bias. She's my sister. Wanjiru is my sister, and I'm so moved by hearing her speak on the inner workings of making this production and input of her career. We've always known the impact, and here it is. So it's my sister paying me a compliment. Thank you, Mogore. You know, you're one of the people who's very key. She actually reads everything I write. I run a lot of decisions or a lot of fears that I have, her, my older sister, my older brother, my younger brother, my father. And I always make a point of, if I'm having doubt, I either check in with my family or I check in with my best friend. And I think that's also a healthy mechanism for a filmmaker, not just to insulate yourself with your community, but have people outside read, because that's your audience. You know, if they read something and they go, I don't understand this, you have to ask yourself, did I not communicate it correctly, or does it require a rewrite? And so thank you for the lovely support.
Your nickname as a child was Magic, right?
Yes, yes. My nickname is Magic, given to me from my parents. I will say this because I think my father is on the live interview and he can testify. I was a very imaginative and very cheeky child, and they never stifled that. They never stifled that. My mom was always very quick to remind me I was Magic. They never stifled my voice. If there was any hijinks or some recreation of some movie we had seen, or people creating fort tents and recreating a movie and running around, I was probably always in the center of it. And it's just amazing that, you know, the way certain people see you become a living testament of the way you make stories and content, and a reminder that at the end of the day, you know, filmmakers, we make magic. You know, we take words from paper, we take people from the past in history and bring them into present day. And even my production company ended up being named Magic Works Production. So it's always a tribute to my family. Every time someone calls me Magic, someone calls, you know, emails my production company, no matter what I do, I'm always linked to my family.
That's
So
fantastic.
I think we have 2 more questions come
good.
in. From Corinne Michna, I'm so sorry if I've mispronounced your name. Thank you for sharing your story and for the making of Box. How has this film changed you as a person? How has Box changed me as a person? It's made me grow. I feel with every film, I learn something new about myself. I learn how I can push myself. And Karen, you and I talked about this when we were preparing for this. I had to shoot Box in, you know, I had to have a very tight production because I was about to have a surgery that week. And it has made me aware of humanity and my mortality. And so it has made me just realize, you know, as much as we make entertainment and we can make, you know, my next project is fun, light, it's a comedy. I shot a horror earlier this year, and it also has a story in it to tell within the aspect of it just being a horror story, which I think the film is going to be on Hulu either end of this month or next month. It's a horror short film that was picked up by 20th Digital Studios, which is now owned by Disney. But it's it's our responsibility as filmmakers. It just made me realize of the humanity that when I look at something, I always ask myself, how can I touch another human being with this? How can somebody, you know, 20 years down the line say, I saw your film as a child and now I'm a filmmaker, you know, which is the same thing Mr. Spielberg's work did. It has made me more, I'm a very empathetic person, but it has made me very empathetic and just want to just constantly keep telling good stories. And it was very funny, you know, I think I mentioned it to you, Karen. My composer, it has also made me aware of the importance of even making a film family, even if it's a small or large project. You know, the song at the end of the film, this film changed me because I was very angry at my friend's death. I was very angry because when someone leaves you suddenly, you question yourself and your role in that person's life, and if you could have done something. And this film changed me because it set me free. I had mental chains, and I did not write for a year. And as a creative, that's a very humbling thing to admit to. I did not write, I did not create for a solid year. I was working at Universal Pictures doing creative marketing as a freelancer for them. I would turn into work at 8 a.m., leave at 10 p.m. and I just did not care about the process. I was completely numb. And this film, you know, when Dara sent me her score, I remember I was in Kenya at the time because my sister was having my niece, who's now a little toddler, and I played it when my niece had just been born, and she smiled. She got, it could have been gas, but she got this like baby-like smile. And I just realized that the last piece of Letting Me Go was that song you hear at the end. That's a Weezer song. You know, it's Henry songs, it's a Weezer song. Is, you know, it's funny because, you know, Disney cartoons, Aladdin says, I'm free. You know, in Harry Potter, you know, he says, Dobby, I'm free. And I just realized that film and music sets people free completely. And so that's how it's changed me. All that anger has left me. I'm back to being a light, bubbly, fun person. And just it also made me to always realize to always check on friends, that the strongest people are the ones who are possibly carrying the biggest burdens. But I have an incredible film family. We reunited for this other project that got sold to 20th Studios. We're reuniting for my next project, and we just hope to keep impacting people, and just having incredible music scored by Dara Taylor.
She's brilliant.
She really is. Oh, there are a lot more questions.
All right.
This is a question from Leon Lindsay. With the success of Boxed, have you received offers to direct any studio movies? So something very interesting happened when Boxed happened. All I got for 6 months was slave movies and Civil War movies. And, you know, my lawyer and I would sit and be like, what is happening? You know, you really want to get, we did get 2 offers, but I read the stories and I don't like what I call stories that hone on Black trauma. You know, there's a way to show everything a Black community goes through, but we actually call it trauma porn, you know, in the African-American filmmaking community, where things are heightened for no absolute reason except for theatrics. So I did pass on a few projects, but I got to, based off Box, getting to the right person, I got to pitch a different idea, which is the horror short that we got to shoot. It was a full paid production, and it got picked up by 20th Digital Fox. So I'm getting more projects coming my way. I got an opportunity to shadow on a Netflix show with a shadowing director, and just getting more experiences and building on. I'm in the process of raising financing for 2 feature films. One is a comedy horror, again, wanting to keep it a little light, but the other one is a coming of age drama called Lionheart, that's set in 1995 New York. So it's the thing with Box, and the next film that I did have fortunately given me a chance to expand my voice and to be a little more creative in how I pick projects and which partnerships I'm forming. So that's been a very nice aspect on that.
That's great. I still can't see the questions for some reason.
Okay. Oh, hi, I'm sorry, I'm a little dried out. Cheyenne Williams, who's the free speech festival intern. Do you think children and young adults should see your film? Do you know what their experience was like viewing it? Okay, so in regards to that, I feel that yes, not young children, I would say young adults. I do believe in trying to preserve children's innocence as much as possible, because we were very fortunate having that. But the world has changed a lot, and the world has changed for anyone, especially anyone with African-American, Black, or African children. And my nephews did see the film. They did have questions. My friend showed it to her 12-year-old son. But what I advise is have a conversation so that they understand what that they're watching. And I tell people, after you show your child, if they want to jump on a video chat with me, I'm happy to do so. And I've done so a couple of times where children have asked me. And, you know, one of the things I found from the children who have seen the film, you know, children are very savvy and they can process information very interestingly. And the one thing I'll never forget was an older woman. She was 74 at a screening in Los Angeles, came up to me and she said something. She said that what she loved about Box is that I educated her. I did not traumatize her. She said it was very hard for her to watch, but I educated her. And that I always take that message with me, that, you know, life isn't always black and white. Life isn't always kind, but we can prepare how people receive information, especially children.
You know, I can see the questions now. And
Okay.
I think we have Dad online. Adding as challenged, Wanjiru grew up being magical all through. We're so happy that you're here with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dad.
What a great family. I love it.
Yes, yes. And it's very late in Kenya. I think it's midnight. So he
Ooh.
stayed up for this. I think it's midnight or 1 a.m. So
Oh, party guy.
thank you, Dad. Yes.
Okay, we have a question from PK, one of our board members. Thank you for opening up about your experience creating Boxed. What were some of your biggest struggles to overcome as a director and creator?
I'll answer in general to Boxed and to just as a filmmaker in general. I had to overcome my fear making the film because I had such little time to shoot it before my surgery. So I had to trust every decision I made. It was the scariest thing. I knew I would not have time to reshoot anything because my surgery had a bit of a recovery period. And so I knew that I had to be very concise. I had to communicate very quickly. And it's very scary knowing that you only have one shot to do something and to trust and these people, everyone around you is trusting you. And so for me, a challenge has been to learn to trust my voice and to learn that when I make a decision, it's the correct one. I'm a very collaborative director. I like, if an actor has a suggestion for me, I say, oh, that's great. Let's get this taken and then let's try it your way. So I always make a point of listening. If my production designer comes and says, oh, this isn't working, to listen. But, it was a very big fear for me shooting Box because I had to be so precise and so quick that I didn't sleep at all the night before the shoot. And I also didn't sleep right after because I was thinking, did I miss something? Did I miss a moment? And for me to trust that I had gotten everything. As a filmmaker, it's just, it's been a journey because, I did have to take a break in filmmaking a few years ago due to being in a car accident. There was a 6-car pileup in Los Angeles and I was in the middle. So I couldn't stand on set because of just, what happened. There were no outwardly injuries, but internally my back and everything. And so in that point, fortunately, an executive at Universal mentioned to me that they had, a position. And I knew I did not want to go back to a full-time job because it's very easy to settle as a filmmaker and it's a risk you have to take. It's a risk to jump and go back into filmmaking full-time. But she said, everyone speaks highly of you, the people who told me about you, other filmmakers. And she was like, you can do it and you can do it freelance. You can come on a project by project basis. And so the biggest difficulty me as a filmmaker was realizing I had to step back for my own financial health to be able to not only make money to survive in Los Angeles because my family isn't with me. My family, most of them live in Kenya and my brother and my sister-in-law and twins in Texas. And so my father and my stepmother live in Mombasa, my sisters and my brothers in Nairobi. And so it's very humbling as a filmmaker. And as a filmmaker, you have to also learn to accept when your path changes. It doesn't end, the path just changes. And so I took off what I thought was going to be 6 months. It turned into 4.5 years, but it was actually the biggest film school I went to, I got to work on these really huge blockbuster movies, but I also got to see the people who work on the films. I got to understand how every person plays such an intricate part, not just on the set of the film, but after the film. And it also made me a much better filmmaker because the project that went to 20th Digital, the studio had its own notes. And one of the things as filmmakers, you have to learn to take notes and you have to learn to listen and find the balance between your vision and the notes as well of the person who's handling the checkbook or the pocketbook. So for me, that was the biggest, the maturing my EQ to get to a point where I could listen to notes. I could understand that there's another voice that has come in. It's not a creative voice. It has to do with marketing and strategy, and that it's not anything personal. And just to also figure and to be a diplomat and still end up getting your way and doing it with a smile on your face.
Talk about turning lemons into lemonade. You really used what could have been a real setback because of the car accident and were able to do this kind of graduate school, actually in the trenches, in the business. And the ultimate multitasking of you doing the shoot, facing surgery. What, the next couple of days later is
2 days later.
2 days later. Holy cow. So this
Yeah.
film, you go, you meet Karen Parsons, the light bulb goes off, you wake up at 2 a.m, you write the whole thing. And from that day until wrapping the shoot was how long?
About 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a rat race. It was the scariest thing. And my sister always reminds me that that's the moment she knew I chose to absolutely believe in myself and to invest in myself. But I also, I don't like to overthink. If I know a story and I know the team that I'm putting together, I love my production crew. They're just all so qualified. They're so good at what they do. And once I tell Bongani, this is what I want to the camera, or I tell Brittany and Mackenzie, this is what I want in production design, I can sit back and just look at the script and do something else and know that they have it in their capable hands. I don't have to micromanagement. I don't have to overlook them. They go do the setup they need, and then they say, come check it. And I say, oh, can we adjust this? Can we do that? But, part of being a director is also you have to be a great captain, and you have to trust that the team that you've put together is a good team, and the skills that they bring to the production.
And you have to be strong without being a bully. I mean, I think
Yes.
that a lot of people can be bullies in situations like
Yeah, you catch more ants with honey than salt.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely,
it's there's no need to bully. There's no need to raise a voice. I like to, if I'm able to, unless there's equipment in the way, I try to walk to my actor to give adjustments. Some directors have been known to shout across sets. I don't believe in that. If I'm not able to get to the actor, I can ask my first assistant director, hey, can I get a walkie on the actor? So somebody will hand the actor their walkie-talkie, and then I can communicate. But it's a stressful set, but you can't be stressed. You can't. Everyone is looking at you, and you're the rudder to the ship, and you have to guide everything, and you set the tone and the temperatures and the tempers on set. So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How do you think, do we have another question here?
Yes, I think we have 2 more.
We do? Okay, what am I seeing? What's next for Boxed?
The film is done. It's still doing festival circuits. We just got it on Amazon Prime in a collection of short films. So it should be available at the end of the month if you want to tell people to watch it. And then we're still talking to Netflix, Hulu, HBO, a few of the bigger, just as big streamers. But, just next for Box is, getting it onto streaming platforms and also getting it into schools and universities. The film has become a legacy and a testament for Henry, and I'm so thankful for that. And just to be able to, to just know, in the same way that E.T. left a footprint on me, that hopefully Box will leave the same footprint for somebody out there. And I just hope with the film that I did remind people of Henry's voice, and just the strength of the human spirit, and just to remind people to be kind, just be kind, and just be aware of each other, and just to do what is right, even as difficult as it can be. So that's what next is for Box. I mean, we have several more festivals to play, but I think in terms of festival submissions and everything, we will start retiring the film from the festival circuit, unless festivals reach out and ask for them. We're winding up at the end of the year. We've had a really great, almost 2-year festival run.
Wow.
So.
I have another question from Carolyn Wilson. Wanjiru, I just wanted to thank you for this inside detail about your film. As a first-time filmmaker and as a peer judge, I had the honor to view your film during the process, and I truly felt every moment within the box, especially the sexual assault scene. As a survivor myself, it truly had a powerful message. I will keep in mind everything you said today and hope to portray my film in future projects to have an impact on my viewers. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I sometimes become speechless at that scene, because I knew it had to be told, and I have friends who are sexual, assault survivors, and that scene has the impact on both men and women, which is what I needed it to just also be able to remind both men and women, if you witness something happening, it's if you can safely do something about it, but just that, not just with sexual assault, we just anything that happens to another human being, you're your brother's keeper, you're your sister's keeper. Just never to try and walk away if you can avoid it.
And that was the great complexity of Henry, in that he had that existential moment.
Yeah.
And he did what he did, because
yeah, and I think he had to live with that, and also leaving his family, and her question answers itself. What's next? The legacy of Vox. This is it. This is speaking to another filmmaker. This is reminding somebody else on how powerful our voices are, how powerful the images we put on a screen impact impact people who watch them at home, people who watch them in a movie theater. And so that's something I always just try to be aware of in my casting, in the type of stories I pick, even if they're light and fluffy, like what else can I add to this, just so that, if somebody's sitting at home and be like, wait a minute, she did do this in the film. And so just to constantly be aware of that. So thank you.
Another question from American Insight. Can you talk a little more about the history of Henry and what happened after the film for him? After his arrival, I guess.
So Henry ended up first in Philadelphia when he escaped, and he was part of the abolitionist movement for a while, and he actually did butt heads for a while, which I found out after I made the film, with Frederick Douglass, because Frederick, it also speaks to the lack of awareness of mental health at the time, and even in present day, and the need for mental health assessment and acknowledgement, that he thought that Henry becoming an actor and doing his magician's trick of coming in and out of a box was watering down the movement and presenting an almost buffoonery type of movement. Henry's previous owners did try to get him back from Philadelphia, so Henry actually ended up leaving and going up to Canada, and for a while he also lived in England and he toured. He did end up marrying another woman after that. He never found his family. They were never seen or heard of again. He never found his wife, who had been pregnant at the time, and the 3 children. So he did start a different family, but he spent quite a number of years up in Canada because there were still slave catchers who were sneaking into freed towns and towns where there were freed slaves and slaves who had escaped, and bringing them back to their masters. So he did go up to Canada because of that.
Okay, we've got a question from Ann Knight. What happened to Henry Brown after he escaped? You've answered that. And how did he actually get mailed?
So the abolitionist movement had people in towns that were helping, and he organized. There was a man based up in Philadelphia called Passmore Williamson, and he actually organized with people, and they organized to put him in the crate. And the scary thing once was he was in the crate, the entire journey was not safe. At the point of entry and the point of exit, those were guaranteed allies of the movement. But in between, they used a company, it's called, sorry, I'm a little fuzzy on the name, but it was actually a company that, it was Western something. I will look it up and hopefully the festival can share after. But that company that they used to ship content in, those boxes were never opened. That was the agreement with the mailing and the shipping company that was used. So he paid the equivalent, the money that he had been saving. He paid $85 in 1849, which is a huge sum at the time, because he was trying to save the freedom, and his family was sold for $500. And so that's what helped his journey. And again, also because Henry started talking about it and performing, that option ended up being cut off for other people to escape, because that made slave owners aware of how he managed to escape. And so all the shipments from that company now started being watched.
And ironically, American Insight is based in Philadelphia, and had we had our in-person event, you would have come to Philadelphia, which would have been lovely. Now, had we been together, at this point, I would be presenting you with the American Insight Free Speech Award, which magically has arrived at your home in California somehow.
Yes, yes.
So officially, congratulations to the 2020 winner.
Thank you. I am extremely excited because I have always wanted to come to Philadelphia to see the Liberty Bell, and now
Perfect.
I have my own award, which is a replica of the Liberty Bell.
That's
so thank
fantastic.
you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you, Wanjiru, for being so generous with your time, your insight, your passion, your talent, your film. I'm really thrilled that we all got to spend this time with you and hope to meet you in person someday in LA or on the East Coast. But thanks, and again, many, many congratulations.
Yes, and I just want to say thank you so much to the Free Speech Film Festival. This has been such a flawless process for me from the moment that I found out that I won, the film won, my cast and crew, and just communicating with you and Margot and everyone in the festival. This has been one of the most enchanting experiences for me, and the smoothest productions, because this was actually a production as well. Getting it to this point. And so thank you so much. And just also creating an environment where my family was able to participate. So thank you for that.
Well, you're very welcome.